Before we begin, take a moment to settle in. Let the noise of the day fade, and let your mind slow down. Tonight, we're going all the way back to the very beginning. Imagine, just for a moment, that you're standing in absolute nothingness. Not a quiet field, not a dark room, not even a black void like outer space. Nothing. No stars. No time. No wind brushing against your skin. No gravity pulling you down. Just stillness. And then, if you waited long enough, which you could, because time hadn't even been invented yet, you'd feel it. A presence. Not loud, not booming with thunder, just something. Someone. The kind of presence that fills a place before it even says a word. This was before there were people, before there were animals, before galaxies were given names or distances were measurable. And it wasn't empty because someone had taken things away. It was empty because nothing had ever been put there in the first place. But into that perfect silence came a voice. Not like a voice you'd recognize. No vocal cords, no air to vibrate. But still, it spoke. And the first word it ever said was light. Let there be light. And in an instant, an actual first instant of actual first time, light exploded across the nothing. It didn't have to be dramatic. It just was. You probably would have squinted if you had eyes, or fallen back if you had feet. But you didn't, of course, because technically you weren't made yet either. Still, if you had been there, you'd have seen the most beautiful kind of light. Not harsh, like the sun at noon. It would have been warm, soft, like a blanket you forgot you had. And slowly, light stretched itself like a cat in the morning, moving gently, spilling over places that weren't even places yet. But light alone wasn't enough. So God looked at the new light and said, let's separate it. Light over here, darkness over there. He gave them names, day and night. And just like that, time had its first tick. You might think that would have taken hours, or even days. But remember, there were no clocks yet. That first day, it began and ended when God said so. And that was just day one. On day two, something strange happened. Not strange to God, of course, but strange if you were watching it unfold without any context, which you would have been, if you were floating there, invisibly, clutching your imaginary popcorn. God looked at the endless waters and thought, let's make some space. So, he separated the waters. Some he left below, some he raised up high, and in between, an open space he called sky. Have you ever stared up at the sky and wondered how it just keeps going? That blue stretch that turns pink in the evening and black when you're trying to sleep? It started here. Not with a bang, not with a blueprint, but with a decision. Still, on this second day, there was no sun, no stars, just light from day one and a newly minted sky stretching wide and blue like a fresh bedsheet pulled tight. And then came day three. This one had texture. God told the waters, gather up. And just like an obedient pet, the ocean sloshed into their place, making room for land to rise, clumpy and uneven at first, like dough before it's kneaded. But God saw it and said, good. And with that, the land got a little more refined. Not in the marble floors and palaces sense, just more alive. Suddenly, there were valleys, hills, and dry patches just waiting to be filled. So God smiled and said, let's grow something. And out of the earth came every kind of plant, small green things with soft leaves, tall, proud trees that swayed as if they already knew they were important, fruit-bearing vines that curled and stretched and offered sweet things with no one yet to eat them. You probably would have wanted to touch the bark, or smell the flowers. Maybe bite into a pomegranate that hadn't even been named yet. But that would have to wait. There were still 4 days to go. And here's something that might surprise you. All of this, so far, had happened without the sun. The light from day 1 had kept things glowing somehow, like a stage before the spotlight is turned on. But on day 4, God decided it was time for proper lighting. So he said, "Let there be lights in the sky to mark the seasons, the days and the years." And just like that, the sun flared into being, radiant and golden. It knew exactly where to go, exactly when to rise. The moon followed quietly, shimmering silver like a gentle assistant. And then the stars, thousands, millions, more than your eyes could ever count, even if you had all night and a decent telescope. Each one flung into place like diamonds across a royal robe, not for warmth, not for navigation, not yet, but just because God thought they were beautiful. And let's be honest, he was right. You'd think that would have been the moment he kicked off his sandals and called it a week. But no. The world was lovely, sure, but it was also quiet. No footsteps, no splashing, no birds chirping awkwardly at 5 a.m. like they do outside your window. So on day 5, God turned his gaze to the sea and sky, and then fish. Bright fish. Slippery fish. Fish with colors so wild you'd swear they were joking. Some darted. Some floated like royalty. One of them definitely looked like it hadn't figured out how fins work yet. And in the air, birds. So many birds. Tiny ones, gliding like whispers. Big ones that flapped like the sky owed them rent. Birds with long legs, stubby wings, strange songs, and weird little feather hats. And just like that, the silence was gone. That's probably enough wonder for now. You don't need to rush through creation like you're on a deadline. You're not. You're floating through time, drifting softly between days, in a world still being spoken into shape. And as you rest here, in this early twilight of Earth's story, with sunlight fading gently into moonlight, above God's first garden, just imagine how it felt to be surrounded by a world being made just for joy. There's more to come, but for now, you can close your eyes and just drift with the wind that hasn't yet learned how to whistle. So now there was sky, sea, stars, sun, and even flying creatures, a world brimming with color and rhythm, but still missing something. It was lively, yes, but not yet full. You could almost sense the anticipation, like a deep breath just before something important happens. And on day 6, something very important did. First, God looked down at the land. The trees were swaying, the rivers were humming, but the hills felt oddly quiet, too quiet. So he spoke again, and this time the ground itself began to stir. You might have expected a quiet rustle, but no, it probably sounded more like a gentle rumble, like an orchestra of dirt and dust tuning up before the performance. And then came the animals. Hooves, paws, claws, snouts, sniffs, and stumbles. Creatures of every size and mood. Some were majestic and calm, like lions stretching under a tree. Others were awkward, like goats who hadn't figured out which leg moves first. There were shaggy yaks and smooth deer, elephants with ears like sails, and creatures you're pretty sure were invented just for fun. You can imagine the confusion of the first chicken. It probably looked around and thought, what exactly am I supposed to do with these wings? But God didn't stop at design. He gave them instincts, built-in ideas of how to move, when to eat, and which other animals to politely avoid. You might say, this is when nature got its personality. Cows began to blink slowly. Cats probably judged everything from day 1. And somewhere, a donkey brayed for no reason at all. And yet, even with all this life, something still wasn't quite right. The world was beautiful, sure. It moved, it breathed, it sang. But it didn't speak. Not yet. There was no one to ask questions, no one to name the stars or argue about whether figs were better than grapes. Creation had melody, but it lacked conversation. So God did something different. This time, he didn't just speak something into being. He got close. He knelt, so to speak, though kneeling is a funny word when you're talking about the creator of everything. He reached into the ground and gathered dust, just ordinary dust, not gold dust, not diamond particles, the kind of stuff that sticks to your sandals or gets in your eyes on a dry day. And with that dust, he formed something new, a body, a shape, arms, legs, eyelids, fingernails, knees, a chest, a heart that hadn't yet beat. And then, when the form was finished, God leaned in even closer and did something nothing else in creation had received. He breathed. It wasn't just air, it was life, spirit, personality, thought. The first breath of the first human came not from lungs or weather or wind, but from the very breath of God. And the man opened his eyes. Imagine that moment. Imagine blinking for the very first time and seeing the sky above you, the real sky, freshly made. The first face he saw was God's, not intimidating, not booming with lightning, just presence. Like coming home before you've even lived anywhere. His name would be Adam. Not Sir or you there or Model A. Just Adam. Which, to be fair, means man. God wasn't trying to be cryptic. And Adam was special, not just because of how he was made, but because of what he was made for. Now God could have snapped his fingers and filled the earth with people all at once. 1,000 atoms all asking the same question at the same time, chaos. But instead, he started with one. Not because it was more efficient, but because it was more personal. And God walked with him. You probably picture a lovely little garden with sunshine, birds, and hammocks. You wouldn't be far off. God had prepared a place called Eden, which means delight, and he placed Adam there, not just to sit around, but to tend it, to care for it. This wasn't just paradise, it was a partnership. God gave Adam the job of naming the animals, which sounds delightful until you realize how quickly the novelty might have worn off. Okay, big one with a horn, rhinoceros. Small one with no legs, worm. Bird with the screaming face, we'll come back to that. But even in Eden, where the air was perfect and the fruit fell from the trees without bruising, something wasn't complete. God noticed it. It's not good for man to be alone, he said. And this wasn't loneliness like boredom or missing someone at a party. This was a deep kind of incompleteness, like a melody missing its harmony. So God did something gentle. He let Adam sleep. Not just a nap, the first true rest. And while Adam slept, God took a rib, not to injure, not to weaken, but to craft. To build something not from the dirt this time, but from Adam himself. Bone from his side, close to the heart. And when Adam woke up, he saw her, not another man, not a creature, but someone like him, and yet entirely different. His eyes must have widened, his breath might have caught. He didn't need a long speech. He just said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh," which is biblical for, wow. She would be called woman because she was taken out of man. Later, she'd be called Eve, the mother of all living. But for now, she was simply there, with him. The first love story began not with fireworks or dating apps, but with deep sleep, quiet design, and mutual awe. And so the world, once empty and still, now had voices, laughter, questions, names for flowers. a heartbeat in the garden, and two people walking with God in the cool of the day. The creation was complete. God saw everything he had made and said it was very good, and not just good in a polite way, not a, yeah, that'll do, but a kind of full-hearted, soul-deep satisfaction. It was done. The painting was finished. The garden breathed. The stars blinked. The animals had figured out how legs work, more or less. And so God rested, not because he was tired. He doesn't get tired, but because the work was finished. The seventh day arrived like a gentle sigh, a pause, a holy breath, a reminder that even in perfection, rest is part of the rhythm. You might feel that now too, that pull toward rest, the way your eyes start to slow, your breathing softens, your thoughts begin to drift like mist over Eden's early morning fields. The story isn't over, so close your eyes, let the garden surround you. Let the first wind brush your skin. Let the stillness settle over you, the same stillness that once hovered over nothing, and waited. The garden was quiet, but never boring. The air was always the perfect kind of warm, the fruit never spoiled, and the light, it filtered through the leaves like a promise. Birds sang, streams danced over stones, and Adam and Eve walked among it all like they belonged, because they did. Everything knew its place, and nothing was afraid of anything. But in the middle of that perfect garden stood two trees. One was called the tree of life, the other the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. They weren't hidden in some corner or tucked behind a waterfall. They stood right there in the center, fully visible. The tree of life was for nourishment, for joy, for eternity. But the other one, the one with the long name, that one came with a warning. God had told them clearly, "You can eat from every tree in the garden, except that one. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil, if you eat from it, you will surely die." Now, if you're wondering why he even put it there in the first place, well, you're not alone. But maybe it's like this. Love without choice isn't really love. Trust isn't trust unless it has options. So the tree stood not as a trap, not as a trick, but as a choice. Days passed, or maybe years. It's hard to say exactly how long they lived in that kind of peace. No hunger, no storms, no bills or passwords or stubbed toes. Just wholeness. Adam worked the garden and gave things names. Eve walked beside him, curious and clever. Together they laughed, explored, rested, and listened. They listened to the sound of creation still humming softly around them. And sometimes, in the cool of the evening, God would walk with them. Imagine that. Not a booming voice from the clouds, but footsteps among the trees, close enough to hear him breathe. But not everything in the garden was content to stay as it was. One day, as Eve walked near the trees, something spoke to her. Not Adam, not God, a serpent. And this one, it talked, calmly, clearly, and it asked a question. Did God really say you can't eat from any tree in the garden? Now Eve knew better. She corrected him, said they could eat from any tree except that one or they'd die. But the serpent shook its head, or maybe it didn't. Maybe it just smiled in that way only snakes can, cool and coiled and far too confident. You won't die, it said. God just knows that if you eat from that tree, your eyes will be opened. You'll be like him. You'll know good and evil. That last part stuck. You'll be like God. It wasn't said angrily. It wasn't shouted. It was whispered. Just enough to let the idea take root. Eve looked again. The fruit didn't look poisonous. It looked beautiful, ripe, full of promise. She didn't see doom. She saw potential. She reached out. She took a bite, and nothing exploded. No lightning, no earthquake. So she handed it to Adam. He was with her, and he ate too. And just like that, everything changed. No alarm rang out. No trumpet sounded. but something inside them shifted. Their eyes opened, yes, but not to joy, to shame. They looked at each other and suddenly realized they were naked, not innocent and free, but exposed, vulnerable, afraid. They gathered leaves, not because the leaves could really help, but because they needed to do something, anything. And when they heard the sound of God walking in the garden, they hid. It's one of the saddest scenes in the whole story. People who were made to walk with God now hiding from Him, not because He changed, but because they had. God called out, "Where are you?" He knew, of course, but maybe He asked because they needed to hear it. Adam stepped out, said he was afraid, said he was naked, said he hid. And when God asked if they had eaten from the tree, the excuses began. Adam blamed Eve. Eve blamed the serpent. No one said, "I'm sorry." No one said, "I was wrong." Just pointing, just fear, just distance. God didn't roar. He didn't destroy them, but He did speak. To the serpent, He spoke of a coming battle, that one day a child would come, born of a woman who would crush the serpent's head, even as his own heel was wounded. To Eve, He spoke of sorrow and labor, of longing and imbalance. To Adam, of cursed ground and sweat and toil. And then, with quiet hands, God made them clothes, not leaves this time, but garments of skin. It was the first sacrifice, the first cost, a covering born of mercy. Then He led them out of the garden, not because He didn't love them, but because the garden was a place of life without end, and now death had entered the story. If they ate from the tree of life now, they'd live forever, broken. So God placed angels at the garden's entrance with flaming swords to guard the way back. It's strange how quickly paradise becomes memory. One moment, walking with God. The next, walking away from home. And yet, even outside Eden, God was still present, still watching, still writing the story. You can imagine the quiet after they left. The earth beneath their feet was harder now, the sun warmer, the nights longer. And yet, even in exile, they still had each other, still had the breath God gave them, still had the promise, somewhere deep in their memory, of a day when things would be made right again. And maybe that's where you are tonight, too, outside of Eden, trying to remember how the world once was. But even here, even now, that same God who walked in the garden still whispers, still seeks, still asks gently, "Where are you?" You don't have to answer right away. You can rest first. You can let the cool of that first evening settle over your thoughts. You can lie still, close your eyes, and remember the sound of footsteps among trees. He's still walking, still near, even now. The world outside Eden was not cruel, not yet, but it was different. The soil that once yielded without asking now fought back. The thorns didn't arrive with sirens, they simply grew, quietly and stubbornly, like they'd been waiting all along. Adam and Eve found themselves doing things they'd never done before, building shelter, digging for roots, chasing after animals that didn't want to be caught. Life had become harder, slower, and louder. And yet, even in that changed world, something new stirred. Life didn't stop just because paradise closed its gates. Eve became pregnant, and when the time came, she gave birth to a son. She named him Cain, and when she looked at him, she said, "With the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man." There was wonder in her voice, a flicker of Eden, maybe, a hope that things could still be beautiful, even outside the garden. Later, she gave birth to another son. His name was Abel. The two brothers grew under the same sky, walked the same fields, but their hearts grew in different directions. Cain became a farmer, digging into the earth, coaxing life from the dust his father had once been shaped from. Abel became a shepherd, guiding flocks across hills and valleys, listening to the quiet bleating of sheep beneath stars. When the time came, each brought an offering to God. Cain brought crops from his fields. Abel brought the firstborn of his flock. Both gave, but God looked with favor on Abel's offering, not because it was meat, not because it was blood, but because it came with a heart that held nothing back. Abel gave with trust. Cain gave with calculation. Cain didn't handle the rejection well. He sulked. He stewed. You know that feeling when jealousy sits behind your eyes like a headache? That was Cain. God saw it, of course. He spoke to him gently, like a father would. Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, won't you be accepted? But if you don't, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. Cain heard the words, but he didn't listen. One day, out in the field, Cain turned to Abel. Maybe they were talking. Maybe they were quiet. And then Cain rose up and killed his brother. One heartbeat stopped by another's hand. The first death. And it wasn't caused by wild animals or disease. It came from within, from a choice. God asked Cain the same kind of question he'd once asked Adam. Where is your brother, Abel? Cain answered with a lie and a deflection. I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? But God knew. He said, What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. It's a haunting image. Not a scream, just a cry. Gentle, constant, honest. Cain was marked, not just with guilt, but with protection. God didn't destroy him. He sent him away, yes, but he also marked him so that no one would kill him. Even in judgment, God remembered mercy. Cain left and built a city for one man, a man who had lost everything and yet still found the strength, or perhaps the stubbornness, to build something new. Life went on. People began to spread. Families grew. Names were passed down. Cities rose. But with every generation, the memory of Eden faded. There were still good moments. People still prayed. They still loved. But something was shifting. The hearts of men and women began to lean toward violence, pride, and fear. The world was filling with people, but it was also filling with noise, angry noise, selfish noise, the kind that drowns out the whisper of God. And yet, in all that noise, one man stood out. His name was Noah. He wasn't perfect. He didn't walk around glowing or quoting poetry, but he listened. He walked with God when most people didn't even look up. In a world that had started to rot at the edges, Noah built his life differently. He was steady, quiet, righteous. And one day, God spoke to him. God spoke, not with thunder, not with flashing lights, just a quiet, clear instruction. Go, leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. No map, no address, just a promise. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Abram didn't have children. His wife, Sarai, was barren. The idea of becoming a nation must have felt like being promised a ship while standing in the desert. But still, he went. He packed up everything: servants, animals, tents. He took Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all their belongings. And he walked out of Ur, away from familiarity, into the wild. The land he came to was wide and quiet. Canaan. It wasn't empty, but it was open. Rolling hills, wild fig trees, strange customs. But God met him there and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." Ur, a place filled with idols and altars made for the gods of stone and sky. Life in Ur was busy, noisy, full of rituals and routines. People worshipped the moon and hoped it would answer them. And yet, in the middle of that ordinary life, something unexpected happened. And Abram built an altar. He didn't build a home, not yet. He built a place to remember, a place to worship. But the journey wasn't smooth. A famine came, food vanished, and Abram, like anyone hungry and human, went looking for help. He traveled to Egypt. That part of the story gets messy. He was afraid that Pharaoh would see how beautiful Sarai was and kill him to take her. So he lied, said she was his sister. Pharaoh did take her into his palace, and everything got more complicated. God intervened. Pharaoh realized the truth, and instead of punishing Abram, he simply sent him away, with gifts, herds, and servants. 3 men came to Abram's tent. He welcomed them, fed them, showed them hospitality, and one of them, who was more than a man, said, "This time next year Sarah will have a son." Sarah, listening from inside, laughed. Not a joyful laugh, a tired one, the kind that says, "That would have been nice 10 years ago." But God heard it. "Why did Sarah laugh?" he asked. "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" And Sarah, now fully flustered, denied it. "I didn't laugh." But the visitor just smiled. "Yes, you did." God didn't scold her. He didn't storm off. He let the moment sit, soft, honest, human. And a year later, Sarah gave birth to a son, Isaac. Laughter. Because sometimes joy shows up exactly where we stopped expecting it. Because even long promises find their way to fulfillment. You can imagine Abram, now Abraham, holding that child. Wrinkled hands, tearful eyes. Sarah beside him, disbelief turned into delight. The tent was filled with laughter, not just from the baby, but from hearts that had waited so long they forgot what hope sounded like. That night, under stars too many to count, a promise rocked gently in a cradle. And maybe tonight, you feel the weight too. Maybe your promises feel delayed, distant. But hear this: God keeps His word. Even if the years stretch, even if the road twists, even if you laugh because believing feels like too much, He remembers. And sometimes, when the world is quiet, and the stars are bright, and your breathing slows, you can almost feel Him whisper, "Look up." The boy grew. Isaac was quick on his feet, sharp-eyed, always asking questions. Abraham watched him chase sheep, stumble through prayers, fall asleep under the stars. The promise had become real, warm, and full of laughter. God had said nations would come from Abraham, and here, in this single boy, that future felt possible. But one day, when everything seemed peaceful, God spoke again. "Abraham," he said. And Abraham, as always, answered, "Here I am." It's strange. Sometimes, even in our mistakes, God still protects. Not because we're flawless, but because He is faithful. Back in Canaan, Abram and Lot found themselves too wealthy to stay side by side. Their herds were too big. Their workers kept arguing. So Abram, with quiet generosity, said to Lot, "Pick whatever land you want. If you go left, I'll go right." Lot chose the green, fertile plains near Sodom. Abram stayed in the hills, and God spoke again. "Lift up your eyes. Look north, south, east, and west. All the land you see, I will give it to you and your descendants forever." It's one thing to walk blindly. It's another to hear the promise again, even after detours and disappointments. Abram walked the land, slowly, step by step, letting the promise sink into his bones. Later, trouble came. Kings went to war, cities were raided, Lot was taken, and Abram, quiet shepherd that he was, turned warrior. He gathered his men, just 318, and pursued the captors. Under the cover of night, they attacked and rescued Lot, his family, and all the stolen goods. When Abram returned, he met a mysterious figure, Melchizedek, king of Salem, a priest of the Most High God. He brought bread and wine and blessed Abram, who gave him a tenth of everything. But Abram still had no child. Time passed, years maybe, and one night God brought him outside. "Look up at the sky," he said. "Count the stars, if you can, so shall your offspring be." And Abram believed him. That moment, simple, silent, unshaking, is one of the most important in all of Scripture. Abram believed, and God counted it to him as righteousness. Faith didn't mean the road got easier. Sarai grew older. She laughed, quietly, bitterly, when she thought of having children. And one day, she suggested something desperate. "Take my servant Hagar, have a child with her." It was a painful choice, and Abram agreed. Hagar conceived. She bore a son named Ishmael. And though God cared for Hagar and her child, this wasn't the fulfillment of the promise. Years passed again. Then, one day, God appeared, not as a whisper, this time as a visitor. Then came the words he hadn't expected, couldn't have imagined. "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac. Go to the region of Moriah, sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." He didn't sleep that night. The next morning he rose early, quietly. He cut wood for the fire. He saddled the donkey, he took 2 servants, and Isaac. No speeches, no pleading, just obedience. The journey took 3 days, 3 long, silent days. Abraham looked at his son, the son he'd waited for, the son he loved, and held that weight inside his chest. When they neared the mountain, Abraham turned to the servants. "Stay here," he said. "We'll go worship, and then we'll come back." Isaac carried the wood, Abraham carried the fire and the knife. And as they climbed, Isaac finally spoke. "Father?" "Yes, my son." "We have the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the offering?" Abraham's voice didn't shake. "God himself will provide the lamb, my son." They reached the top. Abraham built the altar, layered the wood, and then he bound Isaac. Gently, firmly, the way a father holds a child who trusts him more than he can understand. He placed his son on the altar, and he raised the knife. But before it could fall, a voice cried out, clear, urgent, unmistakable. "Abraham, Abraham." He stopped. "Here I am." "Do not lay a hand on the boy." Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld your son, your only son." And then Abraham saw it, a ram caught in the thicket by its horns. He took the ram and offered it instead of his son. On that mountain, Abraham gave it a name: "The Lord will provide." It wasn't about the test. It was about trust. Abraham hadn't passed because of strength or strategy, but because he held nothing back, not even what he loved most. That night, perhaps Isaac curled close to his father. Perhaps Abraham watched him breathe, knowing every inhale was a gift. And perhaps the stars above Moriah burned just a little brighter. The story didn't end there. Sarah grew old, then older still, and one day her breath simply stopped. Abraham buried her in a cave, the first piece of land he ever owned in the land of promise. He grieved her deeply, but even in sorrow, he still trusted. And Isaac? He needed a wife. Abraham sent his servant back to his homeland with specific instructions. Not just anyone, the right one. A woman of kindness, strength, and faith. The servant prayed. At a well in the evening, he asked God for a sign. "Let the woman who offers water to me and to my camels be the one." Before he finished praying, Rebekah appeared. She offered him water, then offered it to the camels. 10 camels. Thirsty ones. She drew again and again without complaint. Strong arms, strong heart. She agreed to go. No hesitation. Just faith. When Isaac saw her from afar, walking toward him across the field, something in him shifted. He took her into his tent. He married her. And he was comforted after his mother's death. Abraham grew old, full of years, and when he died, he was buried beside Sarah under the oak trees of Mamre. His life wasn't easy. It was filled with waiting, wandering, testing. But through it all, he had followed, he had listened, and God had never left him. Now the promise passed to Isaac, a new chapter, a new generation, but the same story. One God, one thread, one quiet voice that still speaks to those willing to listen. So if you're listening now, somewhere between waking and dreaming, remember this. The journey matters. The climb, the waiting, even the doubt. Because when you trust, even without a map, you walk in the footsteps of those who were called and went. And sometimes the mountain you're climbing isn't a test. It's the place where God already has the answer waiting, just beyond what you can see. Isaac was not as loud as his father. He didn't build altars on every hill or journey through as many lands. His life was quieter, more settled. He dug wells. He reopened the ones his father had dug. And when people filled them in or claimed them, he moved on without fighting. Peaceful, steady, patient. He married Rebekah, and for a long time they couldn't have children. It must have felt familiar, the ache of waiting, the echo of his mother's story. But Isaac prayed, and God answered. Rebekah became pregnant. And then, something strange. The babies struggled inside her. Not just kicking, wrestling. It felt like a battle before birth. She asked God why, and God answered, 2 nations are in your womb, 2 peoples separated from birth. One will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. When the time came, twins were born. The first came out red and hairy, like a little wild animal. They named him Esau. The second came out gripping his brother's heel. They named him Jacob. The name meant heel grabber, or one who takes by the heel. It would prove prophetic. The boys grew. Esau became a hunter, wild, fast, covered in the smell of open fields and roasted meat. Jacob stayed closer to the tents, thoughtful, quiet, a planner. Isaac loved Esau, for the game he brought home, for the strength he carried. Rebekah loved Jacob. It was a family with cracks, and those cracks grew. One day, Esau came back from the hunt, exhausted and empty-handed. Jacob was cooking lentil stew. Nothing fancy, but it smelled amazing. "Give me some of that," Esau said. "I'm starving." Jacob looked up. "Sell me your birthright first." Esau blinked. "What good is a birthright if I die of hunger?" So he swore an oath, and Jacob gave him stew. It seemed small, just a meal, but it was the beginning of something bigger. Years later, Isaac grew old. His eyes failed. He called Esau to his side and said, "Hunt for me. Make me my favorite meal. Then I'll bless you before I die." The blessing wasn't just words. It was inheritance, authority, the echo of the promise passed from Abraham. But Rebekah heard, and she moved quickly. While Esau hunted, she told Jacob to bring her goats. She made a meal, dressed Jacob in Esau's clothes, even put goat skins on his arms and neck to mimic Esau's roughness. Jacob went in. Isaac was suspicious. "How did you hunt so fast?" "The Lord gave me success," Jacob said. Isaac touched his hands, smelled his clothes, heard his voice, and then he gave the blessing. When Esau returned, meal in hand, the truth unraveled quickly. Isaac trembled. Esau wept. "Bless me too, Father." But the blessing had already been spoken, and so the rift widened. Esau burned with anger. Jacob fled, sent by his mother to her brother Laban far away. He left not as a prince, but as a fugitive, alone, afraid, carrying a blessing he barely understood. He slept one night with a stone for a pillow, and as he slept, he dreamed. A ladder stretched from earth to heaven. Angels ascended and descended, and at the top stood the Lord. God spoke. "I am the God of Abraham and Isaac. The land you're lying on, I will give it to your descendants. I am with you. I will watch over you. I will bring you back to this land." Jacob woke with awe. "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I didn't know it." He called the place Bethel, House of God, and he made a vow. "If God will be with me, then the Lord will be my God." It wasn't a perfect vow. It was cautious, conditional, but it was a start. And so Jacob journeyed on. He reached Laban's house, met Rachel at a well, fell in love immediately, worked 7 years to marry her. The years felt like days, the Bible says, because of his love. But on the wedding night, Laban deceived him. In the morning, Jacob woke to find Leah, the older sister, instead of Rachel. Laban shrugged. "It's not our custom to marry the younger first. Work another 7 years, and you can have Rachel too." And Jacob did. It was the first time the deceiver was deceived. Jacob ended up with 2 wives, 2 sisters, 2 homes under one roof. Tension, jealousy, competition. Leah, unloved, had children quickly. Rachel, dearly loved, remained childless. Leah named her sons one by one, each name a cry for love, a hope that Jacob would finally see her. Eventually, Rachel bore a son too, Joseph, the favorite. And the story of Jacob began to echo forward again. rivalry between brothers, the weight of favoritism, the cost of deceit. But that's for later. Tonight, rest in this. The story doesn't move in straight lines. It weaves, it winds, and yet God follows it all. Through wrestling wombs, stolen blessings, lonely stones, and ladders stretching to the sky, He speaks not just to the perfect, but to the flawed, the restless, the uncertain. He still does. So close your eyes. Let the ladder linger in your mind, the kind that reaches past stars, past sorrow, all the way into light. He is still with you, even if you didn't know it until now. Time passed. Jacob's household grew large. He had sons, servants, flocks, and a complicated relationship with his uncle Laban. There was tension under every feast, bargains behind every handshake. Jacob had worked 14 years for Rachel, another 6 for his flocks. God had blessed him with success, even when Laban tried to cheat him. The livestock multiplied, his wealth grew. But one morning, Jacob looked around and knew it was time to leave, time to go home. He didn't announce it. He gathered his family quietly and slipped away while Laban was off shearing sheep. It wasn't the most diplomatic exit, and it didn't go unnoticed. Laban caught up days later, demanding explanations, but instead of violence, they ended with a covenant. Stones piled in a circle, a line neither would cross in anger. Then they parted. Jacob turned toward home, and home meant Esau. The last time they'd seen each other, Esau had sworn to kill him. Jacob remembered the look in his brother's eyes, the tears, the rage. Years had passed, but fear doesn't always measure time. So he sent messengers ahead, told them to say, "Your servant Jacob is coming. He brings gifts. He seeks favor." The messengers returned with news. Esau is coming, with 400 men. Jacob froze. 400. Not 4, not 40. 400. It didn't sound like a reunion. It sounded like an army. He split his camp in two, thinking, if Esau attacks one, the other might escape. He prepared gifts. Herds of goats, camels, sheep. He sent them ahead in waves, each one a buffer, a plea. That night he crossed a stream with his family, then he returned to the other side, alone. And something happened. A man appeared, or perhaps an angel, or perhaps God himself. The figure didn't speak. He wrestled Jacob, all night. No words, just struggle. Dust, grit, the kind of battle that wears down bone and soul. Jacob held on, refused to let go. As dawn neared, the man touched Jacob's hip, and it dislocated instantly. Still, Jacob clung to him. "I will not let you go, unless you bless me." "What is your name?" the man asked. "Jacob." "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men, and have overcome." Jacob limped away with a new name, Israel, the one who wrestles, the one who holds on. And just beyond the stream, the sun rose. He looked up and saw Esau approaching. 400 men behind him. No more gifts to send. No more distance to buy time. Jacob bowed low to the ground 7 times. Each step a prayer. Each movement a surrender. And Esau ran. Not with a sword, not with fury. He ran to his brother, threw his arms around him, held him, wept. The years fell away in that moment. The stolen birthright, the stew, the blessing, the hatred. It dissolved like mist in morning light. 2 brothers reunited. Not because time fixed everything, because grace did. They talked. traveled together a while, then parted again, peacefully. Jacob had seen the face of God in the man who wrestled him, and now, perhaps, in the face of his brother too. Years went on. His sons grew. One of them, Joseph, would soon carry the story even farther. But Jacob never forgot that night, the wrestling, the limp, the name. Because sometimes it's in the struggle that we discover who we really are. And maybe you felt that too. Wrestling in the dark, holding on when it hurts, not understanding, but refusing to let go. And maybe, just maybe, the blessing comes not in winning, but in still being there when the sun rises. So let your body sink deeper into rest. Let your hands unclench. You don't have to wrestle tonight. The name has already been given. The blessing already spoken. You are not alone. Even in the dark, you are seen. And morning always comes. Joseph was 17, the youngest, at least for now. He had 11 brothers. That already tells you everything you need to know about the tension level in the tent. Jacob loved him more than the others. He didn't hide it. He made Joseph a special robe, long, colorful, elegant. Not something for chasing sheep or digging ditches. It looked like something a prince would wear. His brothers noticed. They noticed every time he walked by. But what made things worse was Joseph's mouth. He dreamed things, and he told people about them. "I had a dream," he told his brothers. "We were binding grain in the field. My sheaf stood upright, and your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to mine." They stared at him. He continued, completely unaware. "Then I dreamed the sun, moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me." Even Jacob, who adored him, raised an eyebrow. "Shall your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow before you?" Joseph didn't explain. He just dreamed, and his brothers began to plot. One day, Jacob sent him to check on them in the fields. They saw him from far off, robe fluttering in the sun. And someone said it, "Here comes the dreamer." They talked of killing him. But Reuben, the oldest, said no. Throw him in a pit. He planned to rescue him later. But before he could, the brothers saw a caravan of traders passing by. Judah had the idea. "Let's sell him. What good is it if we kill him? Let's profit instead." They agreed. They pulled Joseph from the pit, sold him for silver, watched as he was taken toward Egypt. Then they dipped his robe in goat's blood, brought it to their father, and let him draw his own conclusion. Jacob wept, tore his clothes, refused to be comforted. Meanwhile, Joseph arrived in Egypt, sold again, this time to Potiphar, captain of Pharaoh's guard. Joseph worked hard, was trusted, rose quickly, until one day Potiphar's wife noticed him. She asked him, day after day, to lie with her. He refused. He was loyal, to Potiphar and to God. One day she grabbed his cloak. He fled. The cloak stayed behind. She screamed, lied, said he tried to attack her. Potiphar believed her. Joseph was thrown into prison, in a foreign land, in a dark cell, with no explanation, no trial, no robe. But God was still with him. In prison, Joseph rose again. He helped. He organized. And then, one night, 2 men had dreams, the Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker. Joseph interpreted their dreams. One would live. One would die. He asked the cupbearer, "Remember me when you're released." The man promised, then forgot. 2 full years passed. Then Pharaoh had dreams, disturbing ones. 7 fat cows swallowed by 7 thin ones. 7 healthy stalks of grain devoured by 7 withered ones. No one could explain them. Then the cupbearer remembered. Joseph was brought from prison. He washed, shaved, stood before the king. He listened to the dreams and said, "God is telling you what will happen. 7 years of abundance are coming. Then 7 years of famine. Store up now, or you'll lose everything." Pharaoh looked at him. "Can we find anyone like this man? In whom is the Spirit of God?" He made Joseph second in command, gave him royal clothes, a ring, and a chariot. And Joseph, the boy once sold as a slave, became the man who would save Egypt. During the 7 good years, he stored grain in every city, built silos, prepared, and when the famine came, Egypt was ready. But it didn't just affect Egypt. Far away in Canaan, Jacob and his sons were hungry. They heard there was food in Egypt, so 10 brothers went, everyone but Benjamin, the youngest. They stood before the governor of Egypt, didn't recognize him. But Joseph recognized them. He didn't reveal himself right away. He tested them, sent them home with grain, but kept Simeon behind, told them to return with Benjamin. Jacob wept. He didn't want to lose another son. But hunger pressed them. Eventually they returned, with Benjamin. Joseph saw his younger brother and left the room to cry. He came back, held a feast. Then, one final test. He planted his silver cup in Benjamin's sack, accused them of theft. Judah stepped forward. "Let me take his place, please. Our father will die if we don't bring him home." And something broke in Joseph's heart. He wept loudly, sent everyone else away, and then said the words they never expected. "I am Joseph." They were speechless, terrified. But he said, "Do not be afraid. You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good, to save many lives." He embraced them, asked about their father, and sent for Jacob. Jacob came, old, frail, astonished. He saw his son again, hugged him, and said, "Now I can die in peace." Joseph moved his whole family to Egypt, gave them land, protected them, provided. Years passed. Jacob died. Joseph's brothers worried. "Now he'll punish us." But Joseph said, "Don't be afraid. I am not in the place of God. You meant harm, but God brought good." Joseph lived to see generations of his grandchildren, and when he died, he made the people promise, "One day, God will take you back to the land he promised, and when he does, take my bones with you." He was buried in Egypt, but his story never really ended, because the God who began with light, who formed man from dust, who walked in gardens and spoke through stars, he was still at work, even in prisons, even in famine, even in the hearts of brothers long broken. And maybe tonight you feel like a piece in someone else's story, forgotten, or waiting, or misunderstood. But even then, especially then, God is weaving something good. You're still part of the beginning. He's still creating, even now. So close your eyes, let the dreams come softly, let the robe fall over your shoulders. You are not in Egypt, you are home, and the God of Joseph still knows your name. Time passed, generations came and went. The fields of Goshen stayed fertile. The children of Israel, Jacob's descendants, multiplied. They filled the land with noise, with laughter, with babies taking their first steps, and old men blessing their last. Joseph's memory remained like a whisper, passed down in stories by candlelight. He brought us here, he saved us. But memories fade. Eventually, a new Pharaoh rose, one who did not remember Joseph, one who did not care. He looked at the Israelites and saw not neighbors, but numbers. They were too many, too strong, too different, and fear crept into the halls of power. So, Pharaoh acted, slowly at first, then ruthlessly. He enslaved them, forced them into hard labor, brick after brick under a burning sun. Cities rose on the backs of weary men and broken dreams. Still they multiplied. The more they were pressed down, the more they grew. Then came the order: all baby boys born to the Hebrews must be thrown into the Nile. It was quiet genocide, disguised as law, carried out by midwives in silence. But not everyone obeyed. One woman gave birth to a son. He was beautiful, healthy, warm in her arms. She hid him for 3 months. Then, with aching hands, she made a basket from papyrus and coated it with pitch. She placed the baby inside, set it gently on the river, and let go. The current carried him through reeds and shadows, not fast, not wild, just enough to be noticed. Pharaoh's daughter came to bathe. She saw the basket, heard the cry, opened it, and smiled. This is one of the Hebrew babies. But she didn't hand him over. She held him, loved him, adopted him. She named him Moses, which means drawn out, because she had drawn him out of the water. The baby's sister, hiding nearby, ran forward. "Shall I find someone to nurse him for you?" And so, in a quiet twist only God could write, Moses' own mother was paid to care for him. He grew up in Pharaoh's palace, learned the language of rulers, ate with royalty, walked marble halls. But he never forgot who he was. One day, as a man, he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave. Something in him snapped. He looked both ways. No one in sight. He struck the Egyptian and buried the body in the sand. The next day, he saw 2 Hebrews fighting, tried to break it up, but one said, "Who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you going to kill me too?" And Moses knew. The secret was out. Pharaoh heard and wanted him dead. So Moses fled, left Egypt, left power, status, comfort, crossed deserts and questions. Eventually, he came to Midian, sat by a well, helped some shepherd girls, drew water, was invited to dinner, married, started over. He became a shepherd, quiet, dusty, forgotten. For 40 years, he watched sheep, learned the hills, spoke to no crowds, had no visions, just walked. But God had not forgotten. One day, while Moses led the flock near Mount Horeb, he saw something strange. A bush, on fire, but not burning up. He turned aside to look, and a voice called out from the flame, "Moses, Moses." "Here I am," he answered. "Take off your sandals," the voice said. "You are standing on holy ground. I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." Moses hid his face. God said, "I have seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries. I am concerned, and I have come down to rescue them. So now, go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people out of Egypt." Moses blinked. "Who am I to do that?" "I will be with you," God said. Moses asked, "What if they ask your name?" God replied, "I am who I am. Tell them, I am has sent me to you." It was the beginning of something impossible. A shepherd, barefoot and dusty, tasked with confronting the most powerful man on earth. But it wasn't about Moses' strength. It was about God's presence. Moses returned to Egypt, not with an army, with a staff, with his brother Aaron, with trembling hands, yes, but with obedience. The same hands that once held a basket would now hold a nation's future. But all of that, plagues, parting seas, burning skies, that's still ahead. For now, rest here, in the stillness between calling and action, in the hush of a desert morning, before the wind shifts, before sandals press into palace stone. Let your heart slow. Let the flame flicker softly behind your eyes. Let the name, I am, settle over you like a blanket of presence. You're still part of the story, and the one who speaks from fire still knows how to draw people out, from rivers, from fear, from silence. Especially you. Moses stood again, where he never thought he'd return. Egypt. Not as a prince this time, not as a fugitive, but as a messenger. He held a staff carved smooth by desert winds, and behind him walked Aaron, his brother, his voice. Together they went to Pharaoh. "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Let my people go." Pharaoh blinked, laughed. "Who is this Lord that I should obey him? I do not know him, and I will not let Israel go." And instead of freedom, Pharaoh gave punishment. He told the taskmasters, "Make the slaves gather their own straw for bricks, but don't reduce the quota." The people groaned, cried out, turned on Moses. "You've made things worse," they said. And Moses turned back to God. "Why did you send me?" God answered calmly, "Now you will see what I will do to Pharaoh. I am the Lord. I made the covenant. I will bring you out. I will free you with my mighty hand." So began the signs. Moses and Aaron went again. Aaron threw down his staff, it became a serpent. Pharaoh's magicians did the same, but Aaron's serpent swallowed theirs. Still, Pharaoh's heart was hard. Then came the first plague. Moses struck the Nile. The water turned to blood. Fish floated to the surface. The rivers stank. People dug along the banks for drinkable water. But Pharaoh would not listen. Next came frogs, everywhere, in beds, ovens, kneading bowls. Pharaoh begged, "Pray to your God to take them away." Moses did. The frogs died. And Pharaoh changed his mind. Then came gnats. Dust turned to tiny biting swarms, then flies, thick clouds of them, ruining food, blinding vision. But still, Pharaoh would not listen. Next, disease struck the livestock. The Egyptians' herds collapsed, but the Israelite animals were untouched. Then, boils. Painful sores broke out on skin. Even Pharaoh's magicians couldn't stand before Moses anymore. Then, hail. Thunder like rolling mountains, fire flashing in the sky, ice smashing trees and crops. Only Goshen, where the Israelites lived, remained untouched. Then locusts. They came like a living cloud. They ate everything the hail had missed. Every leaf, every green thing, gone. Then darkness. A deep, heavy night, 3 full days. No lamps, no stars, no moon. But in Goshen, there was light. After each plague, Pharaoh wavered, promised, changed his mind. Then came the final one. God told Moses, "One more plague I will bring. Then Pharaoh will let you go." He gave instructions for a meal. A lamb, roasted whole, bread without yeast, bitter herbs, blood from the lamb painted on the door frames. That night, the angel of death passed over Egypt. In every house without the blood, the firstborn died, from the palace to the prison, from Pharaoh's son to the cattle in the fields. Cries rose up across Egypt like a tide of grief, and Pharaoh, shattered, called for Moses in the night. "Go," he said, "take your people, leave." The Israelites packed quickly, carried unleavened dough on their backs, gold and silver in their hands, gifts from frightened Egyptians. They left in haste. After 400 years of bondage, they walked out free. But it wasn't over. Pharaoh changed his mind again, gathered his army, chariots, horses, soldiers. He chased them into the wilderness. The Israelites reached the sea. Water ahead, dust clouds behind. Fear rose. Moses stretched out his staff, and the sea parted. Walls of water rose on each side. The people walked through on dry ground. Behind them, Pharaoh's army followed. Then the water returned. The sea closed in a roar. Chariots vanished. Silence fell. The people stood on the far shore, free, safe, and they sang. The God who created oceans had moved one. He wasn't done shaping his world. That night, the stars glowed a little brighter, the wind blew softer, and the God of the beginning whispered once again, "I am." And maybe that's what you need to hear tonight, that he still parts seas, still makes a way where there is none, still carries people from slavery into song. So breathe deeper. Let your shoulders rest. There is no army chasing you here. Only stars, only peace, only the quiet footsteps of a God who still leads his people. By fire in the dark and cloud in the day. You are not forgotten. You are not trapped. You are already on dry ground. The Israelites had never been free before. Not really. They knew how to build cities, carry bricks, survive whips. But freedom? That was new. They didn't walk in straight lines. They wandered. God didn't lead them by the shortest route. He led them the long way, through the wilderness. A pillar of cloud went ahead of them by day, a pillar of fire by night. Always moving, always visible. A reminder that they weren't walking alone. But the wilderness is thirsty. Hot during the day, cold at night. They soon grew hungry. They complained. "Did you bring us out here to die?" they said to Moses. "At least in Egypt we had pots of meat and bread." God didn't get angry. He listened. That night, quail filled the camp, meat falling from the sky. In the morning, something fine and flaky appeared on the ground. They didn't know what it was, so they called it manna, which means, "What is it?" It tasted like honey wafers, sweet, gentle, just enough for each day, except the day before Sabbath. Then they could gather double. It was a rhythm, a training, a way to learn trust, one bite at a time. Water came too. Once, when they were thirsty again, Moses struck a rock, and water poured out. Clear and cold from stone, a stream in the desert. But they still grumbled. They still remembered Egypt fondly, forgetting the chains and only recalling the onions. That's how memory works sometimes. We clean it up, polish the past, and forget how heavy it really was. One day they reached a mountain, Mount Sinai, and God said, "I will speak to them." He told Moses to prepare the people, wash their clothes, set boundaries around the mountain. Wait. Then, on the third day, thunder rolled. Lightning flashed. A thick cloud covered the mountain. The sound of a trumpet grew louder and louder, and then, silence. God spoke. His voice wasn't like anything they'd heard. It wasn't just sound. It was weight. A presence that filled the air. He gave them commandments, not to crush them, but to shape them. 10 words, to teach a free people how to live free. No other gods, no idols. Honor my name. Keep the Sabbath. Honor your parents. Don't kill. Don't commit adultery. Don't steal. Don't lie. Don't covet. Simple, direct. Enough for a nation. Enough for a lifetime.
The people trembled.
"Don't let God speak to us again," they told Moses. "You speak to us." Moses climbed the mountain, met with God, spoke with him like a friend. He stayed 40 days and 40 nights. God gave instructions, not just for laws, but for a tabernacle, a tent where he could dwell among his people. He gave blueprints for beauty, gold, linen, cedar, a space where heaven touched earth. But while Moses was away, the people grew restless. They asked Aaron for a god they could see. He took their gold, melted it, and formed a calf. "This is your God," he said. They danced around it, celebrated. God saw. Moses came down, carrying the stone tablets. And when he saw the calf, the singing, the betrayal, he smashed the tablets. The golden calf was ground into powder. The camp fell silent. But God didn't abandon them. He called Moses back, carved new tablets, renewed the covenant, passed before Moses and said his name, the Lord, compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness. Moses came down the mountain again. His face was shining. The people built the tabernacle, exactly as instructed. Cloth woven with care, gold hammered with precision. Every beam, every socket, every thread offered freely. And when it was finished, the cloud covered it. God's glory filled the tent. He had made the world, shaped a people, and now chose to dwell among them. In the desert, in the dust. Maybe that's the part that's easy to forget. That God didn't wait for palaces. He didn't live on mountains or hide in stars. He came down, into the middle of wandering people with dirty feet and short tempers. He stayed. And maybe tonight, you feel like you're wandering too. Not lost, just tired. Still learning how to trust, still gathering manna, still circling mountains that don't seem to move. But he's there, in the cloud, in the fire, in the stillness. He doesn't leave. So settle in. Let your breathing slow. Let the dust fall around your tent. He's not waiting for you to reach the end. He walks with you in the middle. Always. The wilderness stretched on, long, dry, winding. The people followed the cloud by day and the fire by night. They set up the tabernacle when the cloud stopped and packed it away when it moved. Day after day, step by step, they walked. But even with miracles behind them, old habits remained. They complained again. About food, about water, about Moses. We remember the fish in Egypt, they said. The cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic. But now all we have is this manna. Moses cried out to God, "Why did you give me these people? Did I give them birth? Am I their mother?" God answered, patient, firm, "Gather 70 elders. I'll put my spirit on them to help carry the burden." Then he sent quail. Again. This time so much it overflowed, so much it became bitter in their mouths. Then came the moment they'd waited for. They reached the border of Canaan, the land promised to Abraham, the land flowing with milk and honey, the land they had left Egypt to find. Moses sent 12 men to spy it out, one from each tribe. 40 days they explored, saw cities, vineyards, rivers. They returned carrying a cluster of grapes so large it had to be carried on a pole between 2 men. But 10 of the spies were afraid. "The land is good," they said, "but the people are giants. The cities are fortified. We looked like grasshoppers next to them." Only 2 men, Joshua and Caleb, believed. If the Lord is with us, we can take the land. But fear spread. The people wept all night, said, "Let's go back to Egypt. Let's choose a new leader." God listened, and he said, "Because you refuse to believe, this generation will not enter the land. You will wander the wilderness for 40 years, until every adult who doubted has passed away." The people mourned, tried to go up and fight anyway, but it was too late. They were driven back. And so began the wandering. Years of circles, years of funerals, years of the same lessons, repeated like echoes in dry valleys. God provided. They grumbled. God forgave. They grumbled again. Moses stayed with them, leading, listening, interceding. He watched children grow into men, watched desert-born girls become mothers. He saw sandals wear thin. He saw hearts soften and harden and soften again. One day, they came to a place without water. Again, the people complained. Again, God told Moses, "Speak to the rock, and water will flow." But Moses was tired, angry, worn down by years of complaints. He struck the rock with his staff. Water flowed, but the moment had passed. God said, "Because you did not trust me enough to honor me as holy, you will not lead the people into the promised land." Even Moses. Time moved on. Aaron died. The people mourned. The serpents came when they grumbled again. Venom spread through the camp. They cried out. And God told Moses to make a bronze snake and lift it up on a pole. Whoever looked at it would live. A strange remedy, but it worked. They learned again, healing doesn't always come the way we expect. Eventually, they neared the Jordan River. On the far side was Canaan. The land was close now, almost within reach. And Moses climbed a mountain. From the top, he saw it. The rivers, the fields, the cities, the trees. He saw the place God had promised so long ago. A land not built by slaves, a land of rest. God said, "You may see it, but you will not enter." And on that mountain, Moses died. He was 120 years old. His eyes were not weak. His strength had not left him, and the Lord himself buried him. No one knows the grave. Only the memory remains. The man who spoke with God face to face, who led a nation through seas and sand, who never reached the end, but had walked every step with purpose. The people mourned for 30 days, and then Joshua stood. You might remember him, one of the spies who had believed, the one who had said, "If God is with us, we can take the land." Now the mantle was his. He stood at the edge of the Jordan. The priests carried the ark, and as soon as their feet touched the water, the river stopped, piled up in a heap upstream, and the people crossed on dry ground. Again, on the other side, they built a monument, 12 stones, one for each tribe, a reminder, God brought us through. That night, the manna stopped. For the first time in 40 years, they ate from the land, grain, roasted, fresh. They had arrived, not because they were strong, not because they were righteous, because God had promised, and God always finishes what He starts. Even the creation story isn't over. It's still unfolding, even now. Every field they planted, every family that grew, every prayer whispered in the dark, it all carried the same quiet truth. This world was made, and it is still being remade. Maybe you've been wandering too. Maybe the road has been long and you're not sure where it ends. But you're not walking alone. The same God who led by cloud and fire still leads by whisper and light. So rest here tonight. Let the sand settle beneath your feet. Let the stars overhead remind you. They've been shining since day 4 of creation, and they still remember your name. He's still with you, and he always will be. The people were in the land now. It wasn't empty. There were cities to take, battles to fight, crops to plant, but the wilderness was behind them. Joshua led them with steadiness. He wasn't Moses. He didn't split seas or call down plagues. But he was faithful. He listened. He obeyed. And when the people followed him, they stood strong. Walls fell. Cities opened. The land flowed with grain and grapes and honeycomb thick as syrup. And yet, even in the land of promise, the struggle never fully vanished. The people forgot. Again. After Joshua died, they turned from God. Again. Worshipped other gods. Followed their neighbors. The cycle repeated. Trouble came. They cried out. God raised up a judge, a rescuer. Peace returned. Then, forgetfulness followed, again and again. But even in that cycle, God stayed. He never left. He never broke his promise.